Hello, everyone. If you like what I'm doing here, please consider subscribing, liking, and commenting. It would really help the channel out quite a bit. Thank you very much.
The man behind the masterpiece. The man behind the masterpiece today, Michelangelo, starring Arnold Moss.
You tell me to paint the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel, Holy Father. But I'm not a painter, I'm a sculptor.
Are you afraid to try, Michelangelo?
You sting me purposely, Holy Father. Very well, then. I shall paint the Sistine ceiling, but I shall detest it. Detest it, do you hear?
These are the true life stories of the great artists, the stories behind the great painting. The masterpieces the world loves and cherishes will be dramatized each week at this time by a featured company of America's finest radio actors. And now, ladies and gentlemen, may we introduce Dr. Bernard Myers, eminent art critic and New York University lecturer. Our host for this period, Dr. Myers.
Hello, everybody. The story of this truly great man, Michelangelo, is long, so I'll preface today's dramatization of his life as briefly as I can. If you have a color print of Michelangelo's famous painting, The Creation of Adam, place it before you now. It will help you enjoy the story you are about to hear. Michelangelo Buonarroti was born in 1475 near Florence, Italy. Although he is known chiefly for his sculpture and painting, he was also an engineer, architect, and poet. As a boy, he learned all there is to know about stone in a stonecutter's yard at Settignano, outside Florence. There he first heard the sound of the chisel chipping against the marble, a sound which was to get into his blood and never leave through nearly 90 years of creative turmoil. Almost from early boyhood, it was evident that Michelangelo was to become a genius as a sculptor. And while he was still a youth, he was already acknowledged the finest sculptor in Italy, which in those days meant the finest sculptor in the world. When Michelangelo was 33 years old, Pope Julius II summoned him to Rome to perform a most important...
My tomb must be beautiful, Michelangelo. As beautiful as the tomb of Augustus.
Yes, Holy Father.
As majestic as that of Hadrian. As famous as the tomb of Mausolus.
It will be very expensive, Holy Father.
Nothing is to be spared. The quarries at Carrara are yours. Hire as many workmen as you need. This must be a work the like of which no one has ever seen.
But, Your Holiness, St. Peter's is not large enough to hold such a tomb.
It will be. Rome is a city of brick, but we shall make Rome a city of marble. And in the center of it all, in the middle of St. Peter's, you, Michelangelo, the greatest sculptor in Italy, will erect in marble the tomb of Pope Julius II. You say St. Peter's is not big enough? Then we shall tear it down and erect a new St. Peter's. Now to work on it. It must be finished quickly. I want to see it.
Giovanni, this is the hottest place I've ever worked in. You're an old quarryman. Is there any hotter quarry in all Italy?
I do not know, Michelangelo. Carrara is the only place I've ever quarried. This is the best marble, I think.
You'd never know it was the best the way those oafs down there handle those precious slabs. Here, you look what you're doing. Watch the way you set that down.
You love that marble, do you not, Michelangelo? You work all day roasted by the hot sun, your eyes smarting with the dust, your hands ripped by marble splinters.
You would love that marble too, Giovanni, if you could see in it what I see. Waiting for my chisel are the figures of the Titans.
The naked, shackled slaves, the earth, the sky, the figure of Moses. It will be beautiful. When it's finished and you see it, Giovanni, you'll understand my feeling for that stone. This is to be the major work of all my dreaming. I had told Giovanni that when it was finished and he had seen the tomb of Julius, he would understand. But Giovanni never did see it as I had dreamed it, nor did anyone else. For while I slaved at Carrara, intrigue went on behind my back. Old Sangallo, the head architect who had introduced me to the Pope, proved too conservative for the huge rebuilding plans of Pope Julius. And now a clever, scheming architect named Bramante took over. One day he obtained an audience with the Pope.
And how go the rebuilding plans for St. Peter's, Bramante?
Excellently, Holy Father. Most excellently. Except,
Yes, Bramante?
the committee has been thinking about one thing, Your Holiness. Your tomb, which Michelangelo is to build.
Yes, my magnificent tomb. It will be a wondrous thing.
Magnificent, of course, Your Holiness. But, do you not think it bad luck to have it erected before your death, Holy Father?
What ill fortune can come of my seeing my own memorial?
One never knows. The committee has been thinking perhaps you should not challenge the hand of God by hastening the building of your final resting place before God wills your passing. All in God's good time, these things must happen, Your Holiness. But,
Bramante's evil intrigue against me was successful, for Pope Julius was superstitious. When December came and the boats carried the stone blocks from Carrara to the docks at Rome, I went at once to see the Pope. He seemed indifferent. Time after time, my efforts to obtain money to pay off expenses were put aside. And finally, one day at the Vatican gate, the guard stopped me.
You are not to be admitted, Signore.
Not to be admitted. Stand aside, fool, and let me in. I'm Michelangelo.
I have expressed instructions, Signora, that you are not to be admitted.
Instructions from Pope Julius?
From His Holiness, Signore.
Well, then, you tell the Pope that if he ever wants to see me again, he'll have to come and get me. Tell him Michelangelo said that, and tell him I'll be a long way from Rome.
I saddled my horse and rode swiftly from Rome, intending never to return. Month after month, the angry, stubborn, remorseful Pope cajoled, threatened, ranted in letters to me. But I was just as stubborn. I would not return. But eventually we patched up our differences. When I saw His Holiness again, I realized how much I'd missed him. In Bologna, I created a statue of Pope Julius in bronze. When it was completed, I returned with him to Rome. My enemies could not question the reconciliation. Even Bramante realized it would be stupid to challenge it, so he plotted new tactics.
I must find a way. How can I discredit Michelangelo? Could he be assigned to do some painting? With a genius but stone. But painting. Yes. I must suggest it to Pope Julius. I must. And so, knowing Your Holiness has been wondering how best to use the talents of Michelangelo, the committee prays Your Holiness will not be too unpleased with this recommendation.
And what is that, Bramante?
As you know, Raphael is decorating the papal apartments. But we still have to decorate the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel. We have reserved it for Michelangelo.
But Michelangelo is a sculptor, not a painter.
He's a genius, Holy Father. And nothing else in our plans is worthy of it. His vision requires such a vast expanse as only this ceiling can provide.
There must be something else.
Nothing else, Holy Father, unless by some ill omen you might be thinking of the tomb.
No, that can wait. Page, summon Michelangelo.
You sent for me, Holy Father?
Yes, Michelangelo. We have been discussing with Messer Bramante here a new commission for you.
Well, don't you mean, Holy Father, that I'm to complete an old commission?
The tomb can wait, Michelangelo.
What then, Holy Father?
We have decided that the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel must be appropriately decorated.
The ceiling? But who would ever look at the ceiling of the chapel? And what is this to do with me, Holy Father?
You, Michelangelo, have been appointed. It is to be painted in fresco.
In fresco? But I'm no painter, Your Holiness. I'm a sculptor. Is there no sculpture for me to do?
I have discussed this with Messer Bramante and...
Oh, Bramante, I see. This is your idea.
You challenge the wishes of the Holy Father?
You know I'm not qualified for such a work. Bramante, why do you suggest it?
Are you afraid, Michelangelo?
I'm never afraid, but this painting... I can see your hand, Bramante. I won't do it.
You speak bravely.
Enough. Silence, both of you. Messer Bramante, you will leave us alone.
By your permission, Your Holiness.
My son, you are the greatest artist of our time. You need big things to do.
In stone, Holy Father. I love to work in stone, but I know my limitations. Not fresco, not painting. I'm a sculptor.
You are a genius. Only you can do this great work. There is no other. There are craftsmen, yes, but they lack your spirit, your strength, your vision. There is no other Michelangelo.
What about Raphael? He's a painter.
Raphael is a mere boy. Furthermore, he is at work painting the stanza. Are you, Michelangelo, inadequate to undertake a work which you think this pretty stripling capable of accomplishing?
You sting me purposely, Holy Father. Very well, then. I shall do it. I shall do it, but I shall detest it. Detest it, do you hear? On the 10th of May, 1508, I ascended my scaffolding. Day after day, month after weary month dragged on. And slowly there began to glow into being across the vaulted dome the glorious story of Genesis told in my frescoes. God creating the sun and the moon. God separating earth and water. The creation of Adam. The creation of Eve. I lay there on my back on the scaffolding, slapping and daubing the paint against the wet plaster. The wet paint dripped into my eyes and over my sweaty chest. The bones in my body became so bent that for months afterwards I was not able to read a book unless it was held up over my head. I was never satisfied. I'm no painter. I was convinced of that. With my other difficulties, there was Pope Julius. Impatiently, he haunted the chapel with his endless questions.
But you are taking so long, Michelangelo. When will you be finished?
When I can, Holy Father, when I can.
I should think an artist could measure when his work will be done. Hurry.
These incessant interruptions, Holy Father, are delaying my work.
Your work? You lie up there dabbling with paintbrushes year after year, and you call it work? When will you be finished?
I shall be finished when I'm finished.
And when will you be finished?
When I am satisfied.
Does my satisfaction mean nothing to you? When will you finish?
When I can.
When you can. When you can. Your insolence is inexcusable. Get out. Get out and never come back.
With this new insult and clash of tempers, I went to my quarters to pack my bag and leave Rome. But before I left, the remorseful Pope sent an apology, so I stayed. And when I'd ended the work and it was revealed to the public, their amazement was unbounded. The people said my painting of the creation was staggering, overwhelming. Julius II was jubilant. I was tired. After my 4 years of toil, I wrote to my father in Florence, I have finished the frescoes of the Pope's chapel. The Pope seems well satisfied.
And now, friends, here is our host, the well-known art critic, Dr. Bernard Myers, with a brief commentary on Michelangelo. Dr. Myers.
Yes, I guess the Pope was well satisfied. And well might he be at that. For it was immediately evident to everyone that here was the greatest single-handed achievement in the history of painting. No other man, then or now, could have succeeded in the impossible job of covering an acre of curved ceiling 40 feet from the ground with a powerfully unified story as Michelangelo had done. Those of you who have visited the Sistine Chapel will remember the first bewildering impression of hundreds of figures strewn across the surface. Figures that soon assembled themselves into the story of the creation, the sin of mankind, and its final redemption. Toward the middle of the ceiling, we find the creation of Adam, that powerfully poetic scene in which the Creator touches into life the clay he has fashioned. Adam lies on the ground like some great classical statue, while moving toward him with the speed of thought comes the figure of God the Father, a symbol of venerable strength, accompanied by the youthful cherubs and seraphim, but stopping short of actual contact with the ancestor of the human race. Compare, if you will, the quietness and repose of Adam with the force and movement in the group approaching him. On the left side of the picture, everything is still, with Adam lazily stretching his hand to meet that of God. On the other side, everything is movement, the billowing drapery, the flowing lines in the limbs of God, and the strain and pull in the little children that accompany him. A great wind has been created by this turmoil, but the movement suddenly stops when we come to the outstretched finger of God. From there, a spark jumps the gap into the powerful but still quiet form of Adam. Michelangelo, the dramatist, restrains the action, but we know that as the current of life flows into Adam, he will get up, shaking the earth with his giant steps, and move off into the future of the human race. And now, before bringing you the second portion of Michelangelo's story, I'd like your announcer to tell you how to obtain the fine color prints that will help you to follow the man behind the masterpiece with more enjoyment.
When Julius II died in 1513, the next popes were not eager to continue building his cherished tomb. The Medici Pope, Clement VII, sent me to Florence to complete work I'd already begun on the Medici tombs. I was disappointed, disillusioned, for the marble tomb of Pope Julius was the one thing I longed to create above everything else. My subdued spirit was reflected in the work I did for the Medici. I created the melancholy statues called Day and Night and Dawn and Evening. At the very time I was working in the Medici Chapel, their control over Florence was crumbling. One day in 1527, while I was putting some finishing touches on my statue of Night, a neighbor flung open the door and shouted,
Michelangelo, there is a civil uprising. The Medici are being banished from Florence.
The Medici banished? Revolution?
The fester of the Medici rule has broken open. It is war, Michelangelo. Hurry away. You are not safe in the Medici chapel. You must get away from here.
In time, I was recalled to Rome by Pope Paul III, who made me chief architect in charge of all works. Paul wanted to surpass Julius, and he commissioned me to paint the Last Judgment on the far wall of the Sistine Chapel. And so now, 60 years old, I slaved with paint once more. The fury of my painting of the Last Judgment was no accident. For to me it was a chance to express my horror at the evil days on which Rome had fallen. My last great work was the rebuilding of St. Peter's. Sculptor, painter, poet I had been. I now designed an entirely new architectural language. The circular dome must be huge, but of such buoyancy as to seem to float in space. The flood of Italian life went on. I remained dean of the work at St. Peter's, an honored citizen of Rome. By this time, I was very close to 90, and I was growing tired, very tired. The work on the 3-story dome of St. Peter's was hardly begun, and the sun was still shining through the open roof on the morning of February 18th, 1564. That was the day I died.
This is your host, Bernard Myers, once more, friends. Now that you have heard some of the... I think you'll agree he was a great man. But our story is not quite finished. Many great men are honored while they live, but few are accorded the reverence and homage which came to Michelangelo after his death. A few days before he passed from the mortal battle, he sent to Florence for his favorite nephew, Leonardo. He requested that his burial be in Florence. After the end came, Leonardo had a little trouble carrying out his uncle's wishes. He took his plea to the highest Roman official.
But, Your Excellency, it was my uncle's specific request that his earthly remains be returned to his native Florence. How can you reasonably thwart the old man's own instructions in such a personal matter?
Mr. Buonarroti, Michelangelo is now an immortal, beyond personal desire. Michelangelo is a part of Rome, sir, and Rome will not let him go. He will be buried here. I bid you good afternoon.
Quick, Tommaso. You are my uncle's dearest friend. You must help me carry out his wish. The officials will be alerted for me at every dock, and they will check my baggage, yes. But on the next boat, Tommaso, you must send...
I have the long canvas parcel from Rome. It's quite heavy.
At last, Cellini. Bring the parcel in. Quickly, man. Cellini, we must keep the burial secret. 4 men will never be able to carry the coffin to the church of Santa Croce if the news is let out.
I fear the rumor is already rampant, Leonardo. The whole city of Florence is buzzing about the square, and the crowd is growing by the minute. They do not know where the body's hidden, or even now he would be deluged by their tears.
Then we must risk it. We shall wait till just before dawn, and then proceed with all haste. We cannot pursue these dark, narrow streets any longer, Cellini. We have to cross the square to get to Santa Croce.
And we cannot dodge these Florentine friends any longer, Leonardo. Look, you can see the lights from their flares. We can never get through.
We must try. They will stand aside.
Here comes the body of Michelangelo! 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 God be merciful, Michelangelo!
We cannot get by, Cellini. We shall have to pass the coffin over their heads to the others waiting at Santa Croce. Yes?
Citizens! All men of Florence! Friends of Michelangelo! You must all help! We must pass the coffin over your head to the gentleman beyond you. Carefully pass it on to Santa Croce. Yes.
Another reminder from your announcer, ladies and gentlemen, to tell you about the color reproductions that accompany this program.
Next week, the man behind the masterpiece will be the most versatile genius of all time, Leonardo da Vinci. Inventor, scientist, architect, engineer, musician, and painter of the most famous portrait ever painted, the Mona Lisa. Be with us again to hear the exciting story of the man behind the masterpiece. Same time, same station.